there's no shortage of noise in the night of the capital of light. The glass curtain wall of the high-rise building is reflected in colorful neon lights. The streets are carved with dragons, and the air is filled with the smell of money and desire. Lin Haoran stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of the office on the top of the Xingyao Group, with his hands in his pockets, and his eyes coldly overlooking the city. His face was clearly angular, and there was a stream of sams in his eyebrows that were inconsistent with his age. The black Western-style pen was as straight as a knife, which could not hide the fatigue in his eyes. "President, I just received the news that the Su Group intercepted us another large order." Assistant Xiao Li's voice came from behind, with a careful trial. He held a piece of paper and stood at the door and didn't dare to approach it, as if he was afraid of touching the invisible low pressure on Lin Haoran's body. Lin Haoran didn't turn around, but just hummed lightly, and a mocking curve was pulled out of the corner of his mouth. "The Su Group, they are again." Since Su Xiaoman left him and threw himself at the old fox Su Tiancheng's embrace, this backstab never stopped. Once, he thought Su Xiaoman was the only warmth in this cold city, but he actually slapped him hard. Not only did she betray him, she also sold the business secrets of the Xingyao Group to Su, causing the company to be stolen for several months. The shareholders were clamoring to withdraw their funds, and the board of directors even gave him pressure every day. "I understand, put the documents on the desk, go out." Lin Haoran's voice was low, as if he was squeezing out of his throat. Xiao Li clicked the head, put down the file tightly, and slipped out quickly, fearing that he would stay for one more second. The office returned to the silence of death. Lin Haoran turned over, walked to the desk, and flipped open the slit documents. Lines of data were reflected in his eyes, and every number reminded him that the Starry Glory Group was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. He was once the most dazzling star in the capital of light and took the position of president at the age of 28, but now, he has become a joke in the eyes of others. Su Xiaoman. He chanted the name in a low voice, his fists clenched unconsciously, and his fingers turned white. Her smile and her brain, her gentle eyes, were once the power of his overtime nights. But now, this face only made him feel bad. He could even imagine that she was snuggling up to Su Tiancheng at this moment, helping the veteran to calculate him with that delicate and despicable look. Bang! He punched the table, and the documents were scattered all over the floor. My chest seemed to be blocked by a stone, and I couldn't breathe no matter how hard it was. He was unwilling to give up, really unwilling to give up. He worked hard on the Xingyao Group. Why should these people step on their feet? Why does he have to watch everything fall into pieces? Suddenly a thunder sounded from outside the window, and the sky seemed to be torn apart, and the clouds rolled over and the heavy rain fell down the basin. Lin Haoran raised his head and glanced at it with a slight brow. This ghost weather is too sudden. He got up and walked to the window, ready to pull up the window, but at this moment, a dazzling purple flash broke through the night sky and slashed straight towards the direction of the starry sky. Room! The entire building shook, and the glass window buzzed. Lin Haoran took a step back subconsciously, and a feeling of uneasiness in his heart inexplicably. Then, he heard a strange sound, as if something was tearing apart in the air, the sharp and low, making the skin numb. "What's this? What?" he muttered in a low voice, his eyes swept out the window. In the rain, in the direction of the rooftop of the starry tower, there seemed to be a group of black vortexes spiraling around, like a black hole, swallowing the surrounding light. Lin Haoran rubbed his eyes, thinking that he had misunderstood, but the vortex did not disappear, but instead became bigger and bigger, and even began to emit a strange purple light. His heart beat faster and he had countless thoughts flashed in his brain. Is it an illusion? Or is it a high-tech malicious drama? But I just told him that this thing is definitely not simple. He hesitated for a moment, and still grabbed his coat, pushed open the door of the office, and walked towards the elevator. "President, where are you going so late?" Xiao Li hadn't gotten off work yet. Seeing Lin Haoran's hurrying look, he couldn't help asking. "If you have something to do, don't follow," Lin Haoran said without looking back. The elevator door was just opened, so he walked in. Xiao Li asked, but he didn't dare to ask too much. the elevator reached the rooftop. As soon as Lin Haoran left, the wind squirted and the heavy rain rushed over, and instantly poured him into a soup dumpling. He narrowed his eyes and walked towards the whirlpool with the wind and rain. The closer he got, the more uneasiness he felt in his heart, and there seemed to be a sense of pressure in the air, which made him feel unusually difficult every step. Finally, he stood under the whirlpool. The thing floated in the center of the rooftop, about 2 meters straight, and the edges were twisted irregularly, as if they were alive. Lin Haoran looked at the eyebrows and tried to see the depth of the vortex clearly, but there was only a deep darkness inside, as if it could suck all the souls of a person. "What the hell is this?" he said to himself, his voice swept by Fengyu. At this moment, the vortex suddenly sounded a low voice, like some ancient spell. Then, an invisible force suddenly pulled him over. Damn! Lin Haoran was shocked and tried to retreat, but the force was so strong that his feet were dragged toward the vortex without control. The next second, his vision fell into darkness, and the whole person seemed to have been wiped into a bottomless and deep penis, and the surroundings were full of tearing, and the sound of his ears was as sharp as a knife. He didn't know how long he had been rolled up, and his mind began to blur, and he felt that his body seemed to have been broken up and reorganized. Finally, a feeling of reality came from his feet. He stood firm and opened his eyes, and found that he was standing in a completely unfamiliar place. This is not the capital of Huaguang, nor is it the rooftop of the starry building. Around it is a deserted valley, the ground is filled with black gravel, and there are several steep peaks far away, with the tops covered by clouds, which reveal an indescribable strangeness. There was a strange smell in the air, like sulfur and herbs. When the wind blew, you could still hear the hidden low birds, like something was hiding in the dark. Where is this? Lin Haoran looked around and felt a little hairy in his heart. He looked down at himself. His clothes were still moist and he had no injuries on his body, as if he was just an illusion. But this place doesn't look like the real world no matter how it looks. A young man, he is quite a stingy, but he dares to enter this forbidden place. An old voice suddenly rose from behind, and Lin Haoran turned around suddenly. He saw an old man in a green robe standing far away, full of white hair, shaved with gusts on his face. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, as if he could see through his soul. "Who are you? Where is this?" Lin Haoran took a step back subconsciously, and his hand was already touching his pocket, but unfortunately there was nothing self-defense in it. He could only try to find a trace from the other party with his head. The old man didn't answer, but just looked him up and down, then snorted coldly, "Humph, it's strange that a mortal has a strange atmosphere on his body. My name is Yunxian. This is the realm of cracking the sky. If a mortal step in, it will be a life of death. If you can stand here alive, you will be lucky. The realm of splitting the sky? What a ghost." Lin Haoran heard a fog, but looking at the old man's profound and unsightly look, it didn't seem like a joke. He calmed down and tried to ask, "Then why should I go back? I am from the capital of light and was just sucked in by a black whirlpool." Yunxian heard a few words of City of Light and raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he had heard something interesting. He walked a few steps, came to Lin Haoran, stretched out a thin finger, and gently lit up his eyebrows. Lin Haoran only felt a cold air flowing into the brain, and then there were countless strange scenes in front of him: ancient forts, burning ruins, and some monsters that could not see clearly. Interesting. Yunxian withdrew his hand and showed a meaningful smile on his face. "You actually have traces of the power of the forbidden curse. It seems that you have something to do with me." "The power of the forbidden spell? What's the thing?" Lin Haoran was confused, feeling that the old man was talking like a book of heaven. But as his voice fell, a burning heat suddenly came from his wrist. He looked down and found that there was a purple rune seal on his wrist, as if he was alive, flowing with light. "This is..." He was stunned, and suddenly there were some unfamiliar memory fragments in his brain, as if someone forced them into it. In those memories, there was a low voice chanting the mantra, and then the flames ignited from the air, and the frost swelled the earth, and even the time seemed to be pressed down. "Young man, this is the mark of the forbidden spell magic. Yun Xian's voice sounded again, carrying an unquestionable majesty. It comes from the immortal world where I am, a taboo force that can overcome rules. You are chosen to be its inheritor. But I warn you that this power is not a toy. If you don't use it well, it will kill you. Lin Haoran heard it half-believingly, but the notes on his wrist and memories in his brain made him believe it. He looked at Yun Xian and tried to ask, what can this thing do? Can it help me solve the real trouble? Yun Xian sneered and did not answer directly, but raised his hand and slapped it. The gravel on the ground suddenly floated up and turned into a stone wall and slapped in front of Lin Haoran. Then, he chanted a few mantras in a low voice, and the stone wall instantly ignited a raging flame, and the heat waves came over. The power of the forbidden spell can control elements, reverse crisis, and even explore a short future. Yun Xian said lightly, but every time you use it, you will pay for it. If you want to use it to solve the problem, ask yourself first, and have you ever suffered the consequences? Lin Haoran looked at the burning stone wall and his eyes narrowed slightly. The brains flashed past Su Xiaoman's face, and the current situation of the collapse of the Star Glory Group. If this power can really help him turn the bill, he would agree even if there is a price. Okay, I'll learn. He gritted his teeth, calming down. No matter what the price is, I'll go back and bring back what belongs to me. Yun Xian stared at him for a moment, and finally said, I have the courage. Since that's the case, I will accept you as my disciple and teach you the method of forbidden spells. But remember, once this road is set on, there will be no day to go back. The wind in the valley became colder and Yun Xian's figure looked a little blurred in the fire. Lin Haoran took a deep breath, and there was only one thought in his brain: no matter how dangerous this forbidden spell magic was, he had to seize this life-saving straw. Those people in Huaguang City, wait. Lin Haoran, he will regret it long ago. Yun Xian turned around and walked towards the deep valley. The sound came slowly. Come on, the first lesson, start with controlling your heart. The heart is unstable, the curse is not strong, and even a small flame cannot be summoned and destroyed my face. Lin Haoran's mouth twitched. Although he was not very suitable for the old man's poisonous tongue, he still followed. The valley was difficult to walk, but he took every step very smoothly. He knew that this might be the last chance to turn around in his life, and he would never let it go. Lin Haoran followed Yun Xian in the valley of the cracked sky for most of the day. The black gravel under his feet made his feet hurt. The wet suit on his body had long become cold and hard, sticking to his skin, making it difficult for people to bear it. He couldn't help but wipe the sweat from his face, raised his head and looked at the old man in front of him, flying in a green robe, and walked calmly, as if he was completely unaffected by this ghost place. Hey, old man, where are we going to go? Lin Haoran finally couldn't help but open his mouth, and there was a little impatient voice in his voice. He is a modern man who usually takes advantage of luxury cars. How could he suffer such a crime? If it weren't for the forbidden spell magic, he would have been out of trouble. Yun Xian didn't reply, and his voice passed coldly. What's the hurry? I'm so anxious, I can't even get over the first thing I can do. What's the forbidden spell to talk about? There's a place to try and talk about, and I'll say it when I'm here. Where is a test site? Lin Haoran raised his eyebrows, muttering in his heart what trouble this old man was going to do. But he didn't ask much, and gritted his teeth and continued to follow. After all, he seemed to have no other choice than to hear this old man. After walking for about half an hour, the valley began to open up, and a flat open space appeared in front of it. A strange stone platform stands in the middle of the open space, filled with runes that you can't understand. There is a sense of pressure in the surrounding air, which makes people feel free to breathe. Yun Xian stopped walking, turned around, and glanced at Lin Haoran with a sharp look. This place is called the Inner Demon Platform. Yun Xian opened his mouth, his voice as if he was chanting a mantra. The root of the forbidden mantra is in the heart. If you have any thoughts in your heart, your power will retaliate against yourself. Stand up and face your inner demon. After passing this connection, I will teach you the real mantra. Lin Haoran was stunned when he heard this, glanced at the stone platform, and felt a little nervous. Inner demon? What does it mean? Isn't there really a ghost jumping out, right? He talked, trying to relieve the inexplicable tightness, but his palms were already sweating. Yunxian snorted coldly and said unhappily, "Ghost? It's more terrifying than that. It's the deepest fear and thought in your heart. If you can't get rid of this, you can't even touch the door of the forbidden spell. Take back to your capital of light as soon as possible and continue to be a waste." This made Lin Haoran's face dark, and his chest seemed to be burned. He hated others the most, saying that he was a waste, especially now. The crisis of the Star Glory Group and Su Xiaoman's betrayal were stuck in his heart like a knife. He gritted his teeth, glared at Yunxian fiercely, and then strode towards the stone platform. "Okay, I want to see what kind of inner demon can do to me." He was so angry that his heart beat faster the moment he stepped onto the stone platform. The surface of the stone platform is cold, and the runes seem to be alive, emitting a faint purple light. He stood in the center, closed his eyes, and tried to empty his brain according to Yunxian's instructions. But how can my brain be so easy to empty? As soon as I closed my eyes, a familiar and harsh smile erupted on my ears. He suddenly opened his eyes and realized that he was no longer on the stone platform, but was standing in the meeting room of the Starry Glory Group. Surrounded by familiar long tables and leather chairs, the directors faced him with a cold face, his eyes filled with mockery. "President Lin, the Xingyao Group is almost finished in your hands. Are you not taking the initiative to abdicate?" A sarcastic voice came out. It was the fatty Wang who loves to provoke trouble in the board of directors. He crossed his legs, rolled his hands, and smiled like an old fox on his face. Lin Haoran felt nervous and wanted to retort, but he didn't open his mouth yet. Another sound inserted into it, as gentle as a knife. "Haoran, you really can't do it anymore, let it go, don't drag everyone down." As soon as this sound came out, he seemed to have been struck by lightning and turned around suddenly. Su Xiaoman was indeed standing at the door of the conference room. She was wearing a white dress, with a delicate makeup, and a pure smile on the corner of her mouth, but there was no warmth in that smile, only indifference and disdain. Standing beside her, the veteran was holding her waist with one hand and holding a document in the other, looking at Lin Haoran like a victorious person. "Su Xiaoman." Lin Haoran gritted his teeth and sounded out of his teeth. His chest seemed to be blocked by something, and his anger and reluctance were almost blown away. The brain was full of past pictures, the coffee she sent when she worked overtime late at night, the sweet words that promised her were laughing now. "Do you think you are still Lin Haoran that year?" Su Tianqing opened his mouth, his voice low and full of pressure. "The Starry Glory Group has long been our bag. You are a terrible failure. How much youth has Xiaoman wasted with you? Now she is her best choice." This was like a pinch, piercing into Lin Haoran's heart. He clenched his fists and pinched his nails into his flesh, but he couldn't even tell a word from his mouth. The directors in the meeting room began to talk privately, and their laughter became louder and louder, as if they were laughing at his incompetence. He looked down and saw that the table was full of imperious reports from the Star Group, and the red numbers were as dazzling as blood. "It's not like that," he murmured in a low voice, telling himself that this was not true, but the powerless feeling in his heart was getting heavier and heavier. Just then, Su Xiaoman walked over, stopped in front of him, looked at him with a low head, his eyes full of depression. "Haoran, please believe it. You can't fight us," she said lightly, then turned around and took Su Tianqing's arm and walked out of the meeting room without looking back. The moment he closed the door, Lin Haoran felt that the whole world had collapsed. "Ah!" He roared suddenly and his fist hit the table hard, but the table penetrated directly like air. He was stunned for a moment, and then realized that nothing was true. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and tried to calm himself down. Yunxian's words echoed in his brain, "The inner demon is your inner fear. Face it and fight it." Yes, this is not true. Lin Haoran gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Su Xiaoman, do you think this can destroy me? Dream. I will make you regret it and bring everything back." He suddenly opened his eyes, and the meeting room began to twist, like glass shattered. and the scene around him collapsed a little, and finally turned into darkness. When he sniffed again, he realized that he had returned to the stone platform. My body was covered in cold sweat and my legs were so soft that I couldn't stand it, but I felt a sense of ease that I couldn't say. Yunxian stood far away, with a lot of praise in his eyes. Hard to be concerned. The old man said lightly, your inner demon is thought and unwilling to accept it, and it is almost swallowed up. However, being able to be removed will show that you still have some willpower. Lin Haoran gasped and glared at him with no pleasure. This thing is too crap, right? I almost thought I was back. He wiped his sweat and knew clearly in his heart that although he had passed this, Su Xiaoman's shadow was still like a thorn, which was pierced in his heart and could not be pulled out. Yunxian ignored his complaints and raised his hand to sniff the runes on the stone platform lit up. Then a purple ball of light floated up from the middle and slowly flew to Lin Haoran. This is the first level seal of the forbidden spell magic. It can blend into your body and allow you to initially control the power of the element. But remember, use it once and consume a little energy and don't come around at will. Lin Haoran looked at the light ball, and the purple runes on his wrist began to burn again. He hesitated for a moment, and still stretched out his hand, and the ball of light instantly failed to enter his palm. A cold air flowed all over his body, and there were some strange mantras in his brain, as if they were born to be engraved in his memory. Try it. Yunxian pointed to a huge rock that was not far away. Recite the spell and summon the fire. Lin Haoran pointed his head a little, closed his eyes and recalled the mantra he had just obtained, and recited a few obscure verses in a low voice. The next second, he felt a hot palm. When he looked at it, a fire that was so big that the fist actually appeared in his palm. Although it was so small that it was so hot, the heat could not be underestimated. Damn it, it's okay. His eyes lit up, as excited as a child. Yunxian drank a basin of cold water. This little flame is not enough for barbecue. Continue practicing, your heart is unstable and your strength is not pure. The forbidden spell is not for you to play with every family. Lin Haoran's mouth twitched. Although he was so devastated that he could not say anything, a desire to fight arises in his heart. Although this power is weak now, once you master it, you may really help him turn it around. He looked at the flames in his palm, and the high floor of the Huaguang Capital, and Su Xiaoman's cold face. Bold, what else should I do next? He turned around and asked, with a lot of expectations in his language. Yunxian glanced at him and said lightly, what are you in a hurry? After passing the inner demon platform, I have consumed a lot of energy. Let's take you to the depths of the realm of the cracking sky. There is a real test there that can bring your forbidden spell power to the next floor. But I warn you that this place is not something you can play by yourself, and may die at any time. Lin Haoran felt nervous when he heard it, but he still felt a little nervous. What are you afraid of? Lin Haoran, have you seen anything? Yunxian sneered and said nothing more, but turned around and walked towards the deep valley. Lin Haoran looked at his back, clenched his fists, and the runes on his wrist lit up again. He knew that this road was not easy to walk, but in order to return to the capital of Huaguang and to make those people pay for the price, he had no choice. In the next few days, Lin Haoran followed Yunxian to the point of splitting the sky and learned a lot of basic mantras. Although he was as tired as a dog every time he used up, his power was indeed a little stronger. The flames he could summon changed from a big fist to a big ball, and could even barely squeeze a small piece of ground. Although he was far from the reversal crisis mentioned by Yunxian, he had already seen hope. Early this morning, Yunxian brought him to a cliff. Below the cliff is an incredible purity, with purple fog coming up, and a dangerous breath is filled with the air. Lin Haoran stood beside him and looked down and his skin was numb. Is this what you said deep in the test? He swallowed, and the test covers the anxiety in his heart. Yunxian point, his eyes were cold. Below is the forbidden area of the cracked space, hiding the core power of the forbidden spell magic. If you can retrieve a spell stone from it, your forbidden spell power will truly awaken. But I remind you that there is not only danger, but also the strange beasts that protect the spell stone. If you are not careful, you will be dead. Lin Haoran's heartbeat was rapid when he heard it, but the crisis of the Star Glory Group flashed in his brain, and the words "Take Your Life" by Su Xiaoman. He clenched his teeth and pointed his head hard. "Okay, I'll go down. If I can't die, I'll climb up. If I die, I'll recognize it." Yun Xian stared at him for a moment, and finally showed an invisible smile. "I have some courage. Go down, I'll wait for you on top. But remember, the power of the forbidden spell is not something that can be achieved by all means, it's up to you." Lin Haoran did not say anything anymore, took a deep breath, grabbed a vine on the cliff, and began to climb down carefully. The purple fog became more and more dense, and a low growl came in the air, making his heart beat. But he knew that now that he had retreated, he really became a waste. The deep purse at the bottom of the cliff looked like a bottomless pit. After climbing for more than 10 minutes, he finally stepped on a protruding rock and stood firm. The surroundings are full of purple fog, and the maximum distance of the video is only a few meters. He wiped his sweat and tried to sense the cursed stone that Yun Xian said, but he could not feel anything except the smoke. At this moment, a low roar suddenly came from the fog, and then, the eyes of a pair of red agaric lit up, like two lights, staring straight at him. Lin Haoran's heart was tightened, and he took a step back under his will. His hand was raised and he was ready to chant the mantra. "Damn, what's the thing?" he whispered, and flames began to condense in his palm. But the owner of the two eyes had not completely appeared, and there was a suffocating feeling of pressure in the air. He knew that this trial was probably more violent than he thought. In the mist, the thing approached slowly, and the huge figure seemed to be hidden, like some kind of ancient giant beast. Lin Haoran bit his teeth tightly, and the flames in his palms became stronger and stronger, and he was ready to face this tough battle. He knew in his heart that this battle was not only about the power of the forbidden curse, but also whether he could really stand up and return to the capital of Huaguang, and overturn those who had stepped on him. Lin Haoran stood on the rock below the cliff, and the purple fog surrounded him like a living thing. The pressure in the air became heavier and heavier, making his chest feel swelling with every breath of air. The red eyes in front of him seemed to be invisible in the fog, accompanied by a low roar, as if some ancient giant was trying to find out his courage. The flames in his palm were leaping. Although they were much stronger than before, he was still unsure of such unknown things. "Come on, no matter what you are, I'm not afraid today." He gritted his teeth and lowered his voice to cheer himself up, while flying in his brain to recall the mantras passed by the Yun Xian sect. The flame curse, the frost curse, and the short-term prediction that is hard to use are not quite familiar, but now they can only get it. The smoke suddenly swelled, and the owner of the double-eyed agari finally revealed his true body. It was a huge black shadow, more than 3 meters tall, and its body seemed to be made of black rocks, with purple light flowing on the surface, like a living moon. Its head had no obvious facial features, only a big cracked mouth, and its mouth was full of sharp fangs. As soon as the roar came out, the smoke around it scattered a few points. "Damn, what kind of monster?" Lin Haoran's pupils shrank, and his heartbeat was almost reaching his throat. He subconsciously took a step back, but his feet were deep and clear, and he could not retreat. The monster seemed to sense his tightness, let out a low growl, and rushed towards him, with its huge claws leading to the broken voice, heading straight to his chest. "Fire flame curse, start." Lin Haoran bit his teeth and quickly recited the curse. With his palm, a group of flames the size of a ball rushed straight into the monster. The flames hit the monster's claws, and a sound of shock was heard. The fire was shining everywhere, but the monster just turned on for a moment, as if it was not painful at all, and then its claws continued to slap at him. "So hard?" Lin Haoran's face changed, his tight side swayed, and he reluctantly avoided this blow. The claws hit the rock, making a deafening sound. The gravel was flying, and several blocks directly rubbed his face and left a blood mark. He gasped and his brain moved quickly. He knew that fighting hard would definitely not work, so he had to think of a way. "Beware of the art, open." He chanted the spell in a low voice, and for a moment, the scene in the brain that flashed a few seconds later, the monster would come again from the left side, with purple light in his claws, as if it could tear the air apart. He suddenly slid his eyes, and indeed saw that the monster had turned around, his left claw raised high and smashed it down at him. "It's now!" Lin Haoran turned over and hid to his right, and at the same time he waved his palm and recited the frost curse. A thin layer of frost quickly spread under the monster's feet. Although it could not completely hold it, it slowed down by half a beat. He took the opportunity to get up, ran towards the rock, and tried to draw the distance. But the monster would not let him escape easily. He let out a roar, and the purple light on his body was soaring. The frost under his feet instantly shattered. Then he suddenly rushed, and the speed was so fast that it blocked his retreat. Lin Haoran felt an unprecedented crisis, and the rune seal on his wrist began to burst into flames, like a precise reminder of his power. "Fight!" He gritted his teeth and decided not to keep it. He clasped his hands together and began to recite the strongest move of the Yunxian sect, the Flame Explosion Curse. This mantra is extremely complicated and consumes a lot. He has never used it successfully before, but now he will have a dead end if he doesn't try it. As he recited the mantra, he felt as if his body had been exhausted, and his chest felt ache, as if his heart was being pinched. But at the same time, the air between the two hands began to twist, and a group of red fireballs slowly formed, emitting a terrifying high temperature, and the purple fog around them was evaporated a lot. "Go!" Lin Haoran growled and pushed the fireball towards the monster. The fireball quickly expanded in the air, turning into a pillar of fire, hitting the monster's chest. A huge sound of fire was blown into the sky, and a huge crack was blown open to the monster's body, and purple light scattered, roaring painfully. "It's done!" Lin Haoran's eyes lit up, but he didn't get enough to be excited. He felt ache in his chest, and his legs softened and he fell to the ground. He gasped heavily, feeling half of his vitality as if he had been pulled away, and his vision began to blur. Yunxian said that every time the power of the forbidden spell is used, he will pay the price. Now he is really here. Although the monster was seriously injured, it did not fall down. The purple light in the crack began to slowly merge. The red eyes locked him again, as if the next round of attack would be launched at any time. Lin Haoran bit his teeth and tried to stand up, but his body didn't listen to the slightest, so he could only watch the monster approaching step by step. At this moment, a humming sound suddenly came from the mist and shouted, "Silly goods, don't look for a cursed stone." It was Yunxian's voice, which came from above the cliff, carrying a piece of impatient feeling. Lin Haoran was stunned and immediately responded that the monster's goal should be to guard the spell stone. "As long as you find that thing, you may end this battle." He stood up strongly, his eyes swept around, and finally a faint purple light appeared behind the rock, as if some crystal was illuminating. He couldn't see the monster and stumbled over and saw a purple stone the size of a fist, with complex runes engraved on the surface, emitting a strong wave of energy. "That's the thing." Lin Haoran was happy and reached out to grab it. But as his finger touched the cursed stone, a strong current spread throughout his body. He was swept out and fell heavily to the ground. When the monster saw the situation, it let out a roar, and its speed increased sharply, and it rushed in. "Damn, there is still protection." Lin Haoran grinned in pain, but his brain was so awake. He knew that this protection must be destroyed, otherwise everything would be in vain. He bit his tongue, lifted his spirits, and recited the flame burst curse again. The fireball was much smaller this time than before, but it accurately hit the air around the cursed stone, making a sound of crispness, like a certain barrier shattered. "It's done!" He gasped, crawled over and grabbed the cursed stone. At that moment, the purple light on the cursed stone flourished and quickly disappeared into his wrist and merged with the original rune seal. He felt a new force in his body, which was more than twice as strong as before. When the monster saw the cursed stone being taken, it seemed as if it had lost its goal. It let out an unwilling roar, and then its body began to disintegrate, turning into a pile of black gravel, scattered on the ground. Lin Haoran sat on the ground, gasping for breath, feeling like he was walking around the ghost gate. "I'm pretty capable." Yunxian's voice sounded again, this time with a lot of praise. Lin Haoran looked up and saw that the old man was standing nowhere, and the green robe seemed to be invisible in the mist, as if he had known the result a long time ago. "You knew I could do it, why didn't you help me soon?" Lin Haoran said unhappily. He wiped the blood on his face and felt his whole body hurt. Yun Xian snorted coldly, "The power of the forbidden spell depends on yourself. If someone helps you, the power will not belong to you. Let's get up, the curse stone has been obtained, and your forbidden spell power has truly awakened. Next, we should go back to your capital of light." When Lin Haoran heard a few words "City of Light," he lit up his eyes and all his fatigue seemed to be dispersed in an instant. He stood up, the runes on his wrist shone more, and many new spells appeared in his brain, as if he was born to him. He knew that this force was enough to make him flip the bill. A few days later, in the valley of the crack of the sky, Yun Xian opened a space crack, and a purple vortex appeared in front of Lin Haoran again. He looked at the whirlpool, and his heart was filled with scent. Although this period of trial was a life and death, it also made him transform from a down-and-out president to the inheritor of the forbidden spell magic. Remember, the power is a double-blade sword. Yun Xian finally dinged in the end, with deep eyes. The battle in the capital of Huaguang is more dangerous than the monsters in the cracked sky realm. Don't let the inner demon control you again, otherwise, the forbidden spell will backfire. Lin Haoran pointed at the head a little, didn't say much, just looked at the old man deeply, and then walked slowly into the whirlpool. Shi fell into darkness again, his body seemed to be torn and reorganized, but this time his heart was unusually calm. Because he knew that after he went back, he was no longer the Lin Haoran who was at slaughter. When he squinted his eyes again, the familiar capital of Huaguang came into his eyes. He stood on the rooftop of the starry building. The heavy rain had stopped. The fog in the night sky dissipated, revealing a dazzling starlight. The lights on the high floor far away were bright, as if they were greeting him. He looked down at the runes on his wrist and sneered at the corner of his mouth. "Su Xiaoman, Su Tiancheng, you wait," he said softly, with chills in his voice. "I'm back, this time, I'm liquidating." A few days later, a storm broke out in the business community of Huaguang Capital. Lin Haoran of the Starry Glory Group seemed to have changed his personal life. During several business discussions, he was able to accurately predict his opponent's trump card. In a crisis, he even used an unexpected fire to destroy the Su Group's warehouse, directly causing the other party to lose billions. No one knows how he did it, and he said that he seemed to have some supernatural ability, but no one dared to ask more. Lin Haoran sat in the office of the Starry Glory Group. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window was the night view of the capital of Huaguang, which was more dazzling than ever before. He held a photo in his hand, which was Su Xiaoman's smiling face, but his eyes were as cold as ice. He knew that the real revenge had not begun yet, and the Su Group was just the first step. That night, he received an anonymous text message with only a few simple words: "I know your secret, come see me." The sender's signature was Shiman. Lin Haoran looked at the phone screen, his pupils slightly retracted, and his fingers were clenched unconsciously. He knew what kind of flowers this woman wanted to play, but this time, he would not be shaken away again. "Okay, come on," he said softly, a dangerous curve flashing from the corner of his mouth. "I want to see what else can you do." He stood up and walked to the window, the runes on his wrist glowing. The Huaguang city outside the window looked like his chessboard, and he was ready to play this last chessboard. Whether it is Su Xiaoman or Su Tiancheng, he even crushed all the dark forces in this city with the power of the forbidden spell. At the same time, at the other end of the city, Su Xiaoman sat in a luxurious private club, holding a glass of red wine in his hand, looking out the window with a complex look. Su Tiancheng beside her was calling, his voice filled with anger, obviously because he was furious because of his recent loss. But her attention was not at all here, and her brain was full of Lin Haoran's shadow. "He has really changed," she muttered in a low voice, her fingers knocking on the wine glass as if she was trapped in some kind of tangle. She knew that the text message she sent might have caused a sensation, but she had to try it. Because she knew very well that after Lin Haoran returned, he was no longer the man he could control at will. The night is getting deeper and deeper, and the lights in the capital of Huaguang are still burning, but the air is filled with a sense of pressure before the storm. Lin Haoran's reconciliation with Su Xiaoman is expected to become the most intense battle in this city. The power of forbidden spell magic will finally show its true power in this battle. Lin Haoran walked out of the office, and the night wind blew over his face, bringing a sense of tranquility. He closed his eyes, Yun Xian's figure flashed in his brain, and there was the warning that power is a double-blade sword. He knew that this road was full of danger, but he had no way out. Whether he revenges or saves Rome, he has to go on until all the shadows in this city are torn apart by him. He walked towards the agreed place, and the starry bay behind him stood in the night, like his armor and his battle flag. This battle just began.